Ever looked at a dollar bill and really wondered where it came from? Or how the world's power structures really work, far from the news headlines?
It's a question that, when you start pulling at the threads, it often leads you down some pretty unexpected paths. Paths far less traveled by conventional historical accounts.
Exactly. Today, we're taking a deep dive into one such path.
We are.
We're peeling back the layers on a book that's, sparked a lot of debate and influenced many. Eustace Mullins' Secrets of the Federal Reserve.
And it's not just a book, is it? It's presented as this meticulously documented, though definitely very unconventional, history.
Right, claiming to expose the hidden forces behind one of the most powerful financial institutions on Earth.
Our mission today is quite specific, I think. We're going to unpack Mullins's core arguments precisely as he presents them.
Trace the intricate connections he alleges.
And try to understand the secret history he lays out for his readers. We'll explore his narrative, look at the specific details, the surprising claims.
Allowing you, the listener, to form your own informed perspective on this truly unique interpretation of history.
That's right. Our goal is really to present what the source says.
We're here to explore Mullins' perspective on these complex historical events in financial systems.
Not to endorse or refute his claims, definitely not. But to grasp his point of view on these, profound matters, and invite you to consider their implications.
So, to really understand the challenging narrative Mullins constructs, we have to start at the very beginning, right?
We do, and it's a genesis that reads less like academic research and more like a classic detective story.
It really does. Mullins' intense investigation into the Fed began not out of his own curiosity about finance.
No, not at all. It was because he received this extraordinary commission back in 1949.
And here's where it gets truly fascinating. He was approached by Ezra Pound, the poet.
Yes, the renowned poet. But the setting wasn't, a university office or a cafe.
No, Pound was a political prisoner. He was confined to St. Elizabeth's Hospital in Washington, D.C.
A federal institution, often associated back then with the criminally insane. Pound had been broadcasting from Italy during World War II.
Urging the U.S. not to enter the war.
Right, and upon his return, he was held without trial. So, picture this. A poet locked away.
Hands a young man Mullins was only 25, a $10 bill, a Federal Reserve note.
And just asks him, have you ever heard of the Federal Reserve System?
And Mullins admitted he hadn't.
So Pound, unable to do the rigorous research himself from confinement, gave Mullins this very specific directive, almost a challenge.
You must work on it as a detective story.
Exactly. And Mullins, remember, he was a novelist by trade. He initially had absolutely no interest in banking or, complex monetary systems.
He was pretty far removed from his literary world, which makes his eventual dedication quite striking, at least from his telling.
But the detective story began, and Mullins was, he says he was incredibly fortunate early on.
Right, his initial research at the Library of Congress, he had guidance from George Stimson.
A truly remarkable figure, founder of the National Press Club.
And apparently known in Washington as our walking Library of Congress.
Yeah, a living encyclopedia. Government officials, congressmen, reporters, they all consulted him for obscure facts.
Mullins suggests this mentorship was absolutely crucial, helping him navigate the huge, maybe deliberately confusing information landscape at the library.
To find the specific threads he needed to follow.
And as Mullins started digging, his initial findings, he claims, quickly confirmed Pound's deepest suspicions.
Which were?
That an international banking group had been secretly plotting the Federal Reserve Act, moving quietly behind the scenes to engineer its creation.
But getting this potentially explosive manuscript out there, that proved to be a huge challenge for Mullins.
Immense. Frustrating. He faced significant obstacles to publication. Almost insurmountable, it sounds like.
He recounted that his manuscript was rejected by, 18 publishers?
18, often without even a comment.
And it was the 19th, Devin Garrity, president of Devin Adair Publishing,
who finally gave him some candid and, frankly, pretty chilling advice.
Yeah, Garrity apparently looked at him and said, I like your book, but we can't print it. Neither can anybody else in New York.
Wow.
You may as well forget about getting the Federal Reserve book published. I doubt if it could ever be printed.
That paints a picture, doesn't it? A publishing world seemingly unwilling or maybe unable to touch the subject.
Despite hitting that initial brick wall, the manuscript did eventually find its way into print.
He later collaborated with H.L. Hunt.
Right, who, from Mullins' perspective, was instrumental, encouraged him to continue his research, produce a more definitive version.
And Mullins even noted, with a sort of dark vindication, this extraordinary claim about the German edition.
Oh, yes. The one published in 1955. It was reportedly burned.
Burned. According to Mullins, the only book burned in Europe since World War II.
Which is a staggering claim in itself. He did observe, maybe ironically, that by 1980, a new German edition was circulating without interference.
Implying a shift, perhaps, in the influence or tactics of the forces he believed he was exposing.
And Mullins certainly didn't mince words when it came to summing up the Federal Reserve System.
No, he had that famous, very provocative quote, that it is
not federal, it has no reserves, and it is not a system at all, but rather a criminal syndicate.
Let's break that down for a second. Each part is a direct challenge.
Definitely. He asserted that this supposed secrecy surrounding the Fed's creation ever since that alleged meeting on Jekyll Island in 1910
has led directly to a staggering $3 trillion national debt. That was the figure he cited at the time.
And he claimed the $300 billion in annual interest payments on that debt, paid directly to these private bankers,
was ultimately unpayable. He saw it as an unsustainable, deliberate transfer of wealth.
And his own personal experiences, Mullins argued, just underscored the dangerous nature of his work.
Right. He explicitly asserted he was fired from the Library of Congress in 1952 for political reasons.
Claiming to be the only person ever discharged from the staff for such reason in the institution's history. Imagine that.
The professional isolation, the chilling effect that would have.
And furthermore, he claimed continuous harassment by government agencies after his expose was published.
Alleging surveillance, strange phone calls, inexplicable obstacles in his daily life.
From his perspective, these weren't just coincidences. They were validation. Proof that he was uncovering something so sensitive, so potentially disruptive.
That it warranted extreme measures to silence or discredit him.
So this background, Mullins argues, paints this picture of a relentless pursuit of truth against powerful, unseen forces.
It forces us to consider, if these claims of suppression hold any water, what exactly was so sensitive in Mullins' findings?
Why would it warrant such extreme measures? It's the beginning of what Mullins considers a truly unfiltered analysis, compelling you to question why certain narratives might be hidden.
Okay, so with that stage set, Mullins' personal struggle, the initial commission, he then zeroes in on the genesis, the very beginning of this alleged control.
The secret meeting at Jekyll Island, November 1910.
He describes it not just as a meeting, but as a secret mission.
Right, painting this vivid picture. A sealed railway car, drawn blinds, leaving Hoboken, New Jersey, heading somewhere secret.
Mullins states it would be years before anyone even discovered the true nature of this journey.
Let alone understood the drastic, profound change it would bring to U.S. history, according to him.
And the participants in this clandestine meeting, as Mullins identifies them.
Oh, it reads like a who's who of the era's financial and political elite, the core conspirators in his narrative.
First up, Senator Nelson Aldrich,
head of the National Monetary Commission, a body created by Teddy Roosevelt after the Panic of 1907, supposedly to stabilize the monetary system.
But Mullins points out, Aldrich has spent 2 years touring Europe with this commission.
Supposedly spending a lot of public money.
Yet hadn't made a public report or offered any banking reform plan before this secret trip.
Interesting timing, to say the least. Also present, Mullins details, was A. Piet Andrew,
Assistant Secretary of the Treasury and Special Assistant to that same National Monetary Commission.
Then you have Frank Vanderlip, president of the Rockefeller-controlled National City Bank of New York, a huge institution.
And critically, Henry P. Davison, senior partner of J.P. Morgan Company.
Seen by Mullins as Morgan's personal emissary, Davison was known for his ability to conciliate warring factions.
A skill he'd apparently used during the 1907 money panic.
And a skill that would prove vital, Mullins suggests, in wrangling the egos on Jekyll Island.
The list doesn't stop there, though.
No. Mullins includes Charles D. Norton, president of the Morgan-dominated First National Bank of New York.
And Benjamin Strong, another J.P. Morgan lieutenant.
Who, Mullins highlights, would later become the incredibly powerful first governor of the Federal Reserve Bank of New York. A key operational figure.
And crucially, the intellectual engine, according to Mullins.
Paul Warburg, a relatively recent German immigrant, partner at Kuhn, Loeb and Company in New York.
Earning an astonishing $500,000 a year, which was an immense sum back then.
Truly huge. Mullins really reinforces the secrecy of this meeting with a quote.
From Bertie Charles Forbes, who later founded Forbes magazine.
That's the one, Forbes famously wrote. Picture a party of the nation's greatest bankers stealing out of New York on a private railroad car under cover of darkness, stealthily.
It's a vivid image.
Yeah.
Almost cinematic. Really captures the secrecy Mullins is trying to convey.
Definitely. And to maintain that secrecy, Mullins claims when reporters were waiting at the Brunswick, Georgia station,
Mr. Davison stepped out to talk to them.
and the cover story, a duck hunting trip.
Just the casual duck hunt. Mullins alleges the reporters bought it, dispersed, and the secret was safe.
Aldrich was apparently impressed by Davison's quick thinking, asked him how he managed it.
And Mullins adds, with maybe a touch of wryness, Davison did not volunteer the information.
It highlights this deliberate, almost theatrical effort to keep their real intentions hidden.
Mullins is absolutely emphatic. No benefaction took place at Jekyll Island.
His argument is that far from preparing genuine monetary reform,
The Aldrich group went there privately to secretly write the exact banking and currency legislation the National Monetary Commission had been publicly ordered to prepare.
to Mullins, this was the ultimate deception. A public facade hiding a private agenda.
So if Mullins is right, the public commission was just a smokescreen.
That's his assertion. He claims what was truly at stake was nothing less than the future control of the money and credit of the United States.
He argues that if any genuine monetary reform had been presented to Congress,
A reform actually serving the public interest.
it would have effectively ended the power of what he calls the elitist one-world money creators.
Instead, Mullins posits the Jekyll Island gathering ensured a central bank would be established.
But one designed to give these specific bankers everything they'd always wanted: total control.
He paints Paul Warburg as central to this, the most technically proficient, doing most of the drafting.
The mastermind behind the intricate mechanisms of control, in Mullins' view.
But Warburg's expertise, Mullins notes, came with a personality that caused some friction.
Right, his thick German accent, his lecturing style, apparently used to impress the others with his banking knowledge.
Mullins implies this was resented by some, especially Aldrich, led to barbed remarks.
But Warburg's presence was accepted because, as Mullins alleges,
He was the one who could devise a plan that guaranteed their future profits.
and Henry Davison's diplomacy was crucial in keeping the group focused despite these tensions, Mullins notes.
Yeah. This section really lays bare a key element of Mullins' perspective, that stark tension between public perception and alleged private intent.
What was presented as necessary, transparent reform.
The outcome of a governmental commission.
Mullins claims was actually a secretly orchestrated takeover, designed purely to consolidate financial power for a select few.
It really forces you to consider how often public narratives about policy might mask very different, unstated intentions.
Which leads us right to the really audacious question. How could they possibly implement this and get it passed into law without a huge public outcry?
Exactly. And Mullins dedicates a significant chunk of his work to detailing the Federal Reserve Act itself.
Which he views as nothing more than a facade of federalism, a cleverly built illusion.
The core challenge, he explains, was how to conceal the true nature of the control they were establishing.
How did they do that, according to him?
Well, the plan, as Mullins interprets it, was to make the proposed Federal Reserve Bank appear to be controlled by Congress, answerable to the government.
But the crucial, almost hidden detail Mullins emphasizes
Was that a majority of its directors would actually be chosen by the banks themselves, either directly or indirectly.
So ensuring private control despite the appearance of federal oversight, allowing the powerful banking interest to pull the strings from behind the curtain.
Precisely. And the real power, Mullins claims, was deliberately vested in a body called the Federal Advisory Council.
The Federal Advisory Council.
Yes, chosen by the directors of the 12 regional Federal Reserve banks, and according to Mullins, specifically designed to remain unknown to the public.
Its purpose.
To control the real work of the Federal Reserve Board of Governors, he alleges. He calls this council the administrative process for unseen, private control, far from any public accountability.
And there was a major tactical consideration, too, wasn't there? About perception.
Oh, absolutely. Mullins highlights the critical need to conceal Wall Street's domination, particularly from Southern and Western congressmen.
Because there was significant popular resentment against Eastern bankers in those regions. Populism was strong.
Deeply felt resentment, yes. These areas had suffered greatly in previous money panic.
Mullins stresses that congressmen from those areas just couldn't survive politically if they voted for something seen as a Wall Street scheme.
It had to look like genuine federal reform.
Mullins then moves to these really audacious claims about constitutional subversion and the incredibly swift passage of the act.
He alleges Warburg's entire plan was unconstitutional, right from the get-go, because it fundamentally stripped Congress of its constitutionally mandated power. The power to coin money and regulate the value thereof. Article 1, Section 8, Paragraph 5.
He argues the whole system of checks and balances would be effectively destroyed.
Right. The administrators of this new Fed system would control money and credit, and they'd be approved primarily by the executive branch.
Mullins even claims the Judicial Department, the Supreme Court, was already virtually controlled by the executive department through presidential appointment, suggesting this widespread consolidation of power, bypassing democratic safeguards.
And the execution of the plan. Mullins describes it as a brilliant stroke of political maneuvering.
How so?
He claims the alleged conspirators ironed out something like 40 disputed passages in the bill in a single frantic day.
40 passages in one day.
That's the claim, rushing its passage on December 23, 1913.
Just before Christmas recess.
Exactly. A time Mullins emphasizes was strategically chosen when most congressmen were heading home, ensuring minimal opposition or scrutiny.
Effectively slipping the bill through with little public awareness.
And according to Mullins, President Woodrow Wilson's signing of the act that day marked this truly pivotal, almost catastrophic moment.
He states pretty bluntly that from this point forward, the Constitution ceased to be the governing covenant of the American people.
And our liberties were handed over to a small group of international bankers. It's not just politics in his view, it's a fundamental reinterpretation of American sovereignty, a shift in who really held power.
And he highlights a surprising fact to underscore who benefited.
The stock market reaction.
Yes. The New York stock market, he notes, started rising steadily as soon as news broke that the Senate was ready to pass the act.
Mullins argues this immediate positive reaction from finance belies the claim that the Federal Reserve Act was a monetary reform bill,
suggesting instead that his passage was seen as a clear win for the powerful financial interests he's identified.
Mullins attributes significant, almost conspiratorial roles to several key figures in this alleged subversion.
Colonel Edward Mandell House comes up prominently. Wilson's unofficial Secretary of State.
Presented as a central orchestrator, a shadowy figure behind the scenes. House, Mullins quotes, chillingly claimed he and Wilson created an instrument more powerful than the Supreme Court with the Fed Act.
And even more strikingly, House's book, Philip Drew, Administrator.
Published anonymously, ostensibly a novel.
Mullins presents it as a literal blueprint for what he calls socialism as dreamed by Karl Marx.
Claiming this book uncannily predicted policies later enacted, like the graduated income tax, excess profits tax, unemployment insurance, Social Security,
and a flexible currency system. It paints House as this long-term, calculated architect of huge societal and economic changes,
shaping the nation's future decades in advance, according to Mullins.
House's London connection is also detailed, adding another layer.
Right. His father, a blockade runner during the Civil War, deposited his profits in gold with Baring Banking House in London,
which Mullins explicitly links to the Rothschilds.
Arguing this established a deep financial tie to powerful international banking structures from the family's very origins, cementing their alleged allegiance.
Another pivotal figure Mullins dissects is Bernard Baruch.
Significant financial contributor to Wilson's campaign, right? $50,000.
A substantial sum then. Baruch later became chairman of the War Industries Board during World War I.
And famously claimed Wilson gave him a letter authorizing him to take over any industry or plant.
Mullins describes Baruch, a self-professed speculator, as being made czar of American industry. Unprecedented power.
He even alleges Baruch made $750,000 in one day during the war after a phony peace rumor was planted,
highlighting the potential for immense personal gain from national crises, gain allegedly engineered through manipulation.
Mullins then gets into the actual ownership of the Federal Reserve System,
making that very explicit, provocative statement. It is, in his view, a private central bank operating in the United States having total power over all the money and credit of the people.
He clarifies the stock of the Federal Reserve banks is held entirely by member commercial banks.
Crucially, not by the government itself, despite the name and public perception.
And this stock, Mullins claims, can't be bought or sold on any public exchange.
Instead, it's inherited by the big rich, passed down through generations of powerful families.
And here's where Mullins makes that truly startling assertion, broadening the scope.
Almost half of the owners of Federal Reserve Bank stock are not Americans.
He even names specific major New York banks that allegedly took over half the shares of the Federal Reserve Bank of New York.
Which he considers the fountainhead, the command center of the whole system.
Like the Rockefeller Coon, Loeb-controlled National City Bank with 30,000 shares.
J.P. Morgan's First National Bank with 15,000 shares.
National Bank of Commerce with 21,000. He lays out these numbers to emphasize the concentrated ownership he believes exists.
And he identifies the controlling families who allegedly own these shares, and by extension, the Fed.
The Rothschilds, Lazard Frères, connected to Eugene Meyer, Kuhn-Loeb Company, Warburg Company, Lehman Brothers, Goldman Sachs.
The Rockefeller family, J.P. Morgan interests.
Mullins asserts these interests, which he calls the money trust, have merged and consolidated in recent years so that the control is much more concentrated, suggesting an ever-tightening grip.
Wow. This section, as Mullins presents it, really lays out a foundational conspiracy theory about the financial system.
It directly challenges the common understanding of the Fed as a purely federal public institution.
It asks you to consider the true nature of institutional power and to question who truly benefits from the structures governing our economic lives.
Urging you to look beyond those official narratives.
Okay, if that wasn't enough to challenge your perceptions, Mullins' narrative then shifts to perhaps his most controversial claim.
That wars and depressions are not just unforeseen catastrophes or natural economic cycles,
but are in fact orchestrated tools for financial gain and control by these hidden forces.
He argues quite strongly that there might have been no world war without the Federal Reserve System,
which conveniently began operations in 1914. Just as the European conflict was igniting.
He claims European nations were already bankrupt from maintaining large standing armies for nearly 50 years.
The situation, he states, that was created by their own central banks, which had systematically depleted national treasuries.
So they desperately needed a U.S. central bank for what Mullins calls war finance, a bottomless pit of credit.
And the Fed, he alleges, immediately forced Americans to lend a colossal $25 billion to the Allies.
A sum Mullins adamantly points out was never repaid, though considerable interest was extracted from American taxpayers for decades.
He highlights a specific example, J.P. Morgan immediately receiving proceeds from the First Liberty loan.
To pay off the $400 million he had advanced to Great Britain at the war's outset, a detail Mullins uses to illustrate direct private profit from public debt.
Mullins also highlights the irony of Secretary of State William Jennings Bryan's protests back then.
Bryan repeatedly stated, "Money is the worst of all contraband," recognizing finance's power in fueling conflict.
Mullins even claims these same bankers financed peace organizations to subtly push the U.S. into the war,
presenting a deeply cynical view of the motivations behind such movements, portraying them as fronts.
And here's one of the most shocking claims in this section.
About the Warburgs and Schiff.
Yes. He asserts Paul Warburg's brother, Max, was head of the German Secret Service.
And Jacob Schiff's brothers were bankers to the German government.
Suggesting the very international bankers he accuses were financing both sides of the war.
Mullins notes that neither Wilson nor Paul Warburg seemed concerned by this. Paul Warburg continued his term on the Fed board while the war raged, implying a profound lack of moral or national allegiance.
Moving from global conflict to domestic turmoil, Mullins then turns to the agricultural depression of 1920-21.
Which he claims was deliberately set up by the Federal Reserve System.
Its purpose, he argues, to regain control of the money and credit that had escaped the bankers' grip during wartime prosperity.
When laborers and farmers had accumulated significant capital.
The method, Mullins explains, was a sort of cunning two-step process.
First, causing inflation by keeping interest rates artificially low, especially for Liberty loans.
Allowing high-wage laborers and farmers to accumulate millions in cash, money that was out of the hands of the Wall Street group.
And they wanted it back.
Then, step two. The Fed suddenly dramatically raised the discount rate, making money dear and scarce.
Forcing a credit contraction that devastated farmers and rural banks. From Mullins' perspective, not a natural market correction, but precise, deliberate manipulation for wealth recentralization.
Then Mullins moves to what he considers the ultimate financial crisis, the Great Depression.
He claims conclusive evidence from House hearings in 1928.
That the Depression of 2931 was planned at a secret luncheon of the Federal Reserve Board and those heads of European central banks in 1927.
Not an accident, he asserts, but a deliberate design.
This secret gathering, Mullins details, involved key figures like Benjamin Strong from the NY Fed,
Montague Norman of the Bank of England,
and Dr. Hjalmar Schacht of the German Reichsbank. Mullins calls this the world's most exclusive club.
critically noting no public reports were ever made of their discussions or decisions, reinforcing the secrecy.
And the alleged mechanism for orchestrating the crash.
Precisely laid out, according to Mullins. Federal Reserve banks, leading up to the crash, doubled their holdings of government securities and acceptances.
Basically buying up huge amounts of government debt, injecting liquidity.
This action, Mullins claims, resulted in $500 million in gold exports, which in turn forced call money rates down.
Those short-term interbank loan rates, a key liquidity indicator.
Right. Mullins asserts these actions together encouraged the surging American boom and fueled the fantastic heights of speculation of the late 20s, inflating the bubble just as planned.
And the pivot point.
Paul Warburg's sudden dramatic warning in March 1929, after years of silence, that speculation had gone too far.
Mullins suggests this public warning was a calculated move, triggering an initial wave of selling.
Then, Mullins asserts the bankers panicked, a strategic panic, in his view.
Deciding to save themselves, not the public, by drastically raising interest rates, initiating the collapse.
The crucial punitive measure, according to Mullins, came in August 1929. The Fed Bank of New York raised its rate to 6%.
Which he states froze out everybody but the big trusts, wiping out an astonishing $160 billion in security values.
To put that in perspective, Mullins notes the entire U.S. cost for World War II was only slightly more than $200 billion. It shows the sheer scale of wealth destruction he attributes to this alleged manipulation.
The result, as Mullins frames it, big bankers rode through the Depression with flying colors.
Not just surviving, but thriving, while millions of workers and farmers lost their life savings.
Ordinary citizens who, Mullins reminds us, had been persuaded to invest by prominent figures like President Coolidge and Treasury Secretary Mellon.
Painting a stark contrast between those who allegedly orchestrated the crisis and those who suffered.
He provides another detail to emphasize deliberation, claiming British papers like the London Statist and Economist warned of the crash.
With the Statist supposedly saying, the banking authorities in the United States apparently want a business panic to curb speculation.
Warnings, Mullins stresses, never seen in American papers, implying suppression of information, leaving the public unprepared.
This section paints a really stark, chilling picture of deliberate economic cycles.
Not as natural market corrections, but as carefully designed manipulations to transfer wealth and consolidate power.
Mullins certainly forces you to ask, who truly gains when the market tumbles? And are such events always as accidental as they seem?
Now let's delve into the nature of this entrenched power Mullins describes. How, in his view, it continues to exert control, with a particular focus on the London connection.
A persistent thread throughout his narrative, yes.
Mullins highlights significant shifts in control during the 1930s. He points to Eugene Meyer, Jr.'s appointment to the Fed board in 1930.
Meyer had a seemingly long record of public service, but Mullins pointedly notes his partnership with Bernard Baruch in mining.
And, more controversially, accusations of alterations in War Finance Corporation records Meyer oversaw, suggesting a blur between public duty and private interest, a constant theme.
Then Mullins turns to FDR's election in '32, hailed as freeing Americans from the Depression's influence.
But Mullins provocatively links Roosevelt's political career to an international homosexual set.
And claims FDR himself was an international banker of ill repute, having floated defaulted foreign bonds in the 1920s, causing huge losses.
Consistently framing political figures as extensions of these broader financial networks.
The Banking Act of 1935, Mullins argues, further entrenched this alleged power.
How so?
It dramatically lengthened the terms of Fed board governors to 14 years.
Wow, 3.5 presidential terms, effectively insulating them from political change, from democratic accountability.
The act also allowed Fed banks to make direct loans to industry and repealed limitations on investment banking, significantly expanding their reach and influence.
Mullins strongly asserts that the huge increase in Fed assets from $143 million in 1913 to $45 billion by 1949 went entirely to the private stockholders.
This staggering growth, from his perspective, is clear evidence the system was designed for private profit, not public benefit, accumulating immense wealth for its private owners.
He then explains Mullins' view of the money creation mechanism and the alleged resistance to stability efforts.
Right. Mariner Eccles, Fed chairman in 1934, openly explained banks create money by the purchase of government securities.
Mullins frames this critically. Money created by debt, not production.
Meaning, rather than money being tied to tangible goods and services, it's generated when government or individuals take on loans, creating new credit out of thin air.
A system, he asserts, is inherently unstable, designed to profit from market swings.
Mullins highlights the Fed board's consistent opposition to legislation aimed at stable price levels,
Which contrasts sharply with Chairman William McChesney Martin's later claim in 1952 that a fundamental purpose is to protect the value of the dollar.
a purpose Martin admitted wasn't explicit in the original law, but inherent in the entire legislative history, a claim Mullins clearly disputes.
Senator Robert L. Owen's 1938 testimony supports Mullins' point. Owen stated a stable price level provision was deliberately stricken out of the original bill.
Due to the influence of powerful money interests?
Mullins emphasizes the Fed is not responsible to the public because their salaries are paid by private stockholders, not the government, highlighting what he sees as a profound accountability gap.
As the narrative progresses, Mullins deepens his exploration of this pervasive London connection.
Reiterating his claim, almost half of the owners of Federal Reserve Bank stock are not Americans, suggesting profound foreign influence.
He then states unequivocally, no official of the Federal Reserve Bank of New York or of the Federal Reserve Board of Governors can command the power over the money of the world which is held by these London merchant bankers.
London, he asserts, despite appearances, remains the true global financial center, the ultimate seat of power.
He explicitly names Paul Volcker, Fed chairman from 79 to 83, as a direct representative of this London connection.
Linking Volcker specifically to powerful entities like Brown Brothers Harriman and, as he claims, the London houses directing the Rockefeller empire.
Volcker's extensive background, Princeton, Harvard, London School of Economics, plus affiliations with the Trilateral Commission, Council on Foreign Relations, Bilderbergers, Rockefeller Foundation.
All cited by Mullins as evidence his course was always charted for him by his masters in London, a predetermined path of global financial governance.
Mullins contends these groups, including the Bilderbergers, meet annually in profound secrecy to determine the destiny of the Western world, suggesting a coordinated hidden power structure transcending national governments.
He also notes the continued preeminence of the original banks that set up the Fed, Citicorp, J.P. Morgan, Chemical Bank, illustrating an unbroken line of control in his view.
His argument concludes that the big profits are made by these gyrations in the financial markets, the booms, the busts, the engineered crises.
And it is, in his view, the London connection that sets them in motion, orchestrating these global economic shifts for their own benefit.
And here's where Mullins makes a truly startling claim about how this alleged London control is maintained over the American dollar today.
He claims British banks, including what he provocatively calls the central bank for the world's drug trade, the Hong Kong and Shanghai Bank,
are systematically devouring U.S. banks and critically control the creation of American dollars through the Eurodollar market.
Now, this isn't just physical dollars in Europe. It's U.S. dollar-denominated deposits held in banks outside the United States, largely outside direct Fed regulation.
He describes the Eurodollar market as an outlaw market, operating beyond U.S. control, where British banks set terms and interest rates without reserve ratios.
Meaning they don't have to keep a percentage of those deposits on hand, allowing for immense leverage and control over vast sums of money.
He also points to the continuity of English common law in the U.S. after the Revolution, suggesting a deep historical legal foundation for this enduring British financial power.
This final section really extends Mullins' conspiracy theory way beyond the Fed's initial founding,
arguing for a continuous, pervasive, globally coordinated financial control, transcending national boundaries and traditional political structures, a profound assertion of a hidden system.
Mullins' work challenges you, the listener, to rethink the very nature of national sovereignty and global economic power,
suggesting the visible structures we see might just be fronts for deeper, unacknowledged forces. It's a powerful call to question who truly holds the reins and how transparent those operations really are.
So we've taken a truly deep dive into Eustace Mullins' highly controversial account of the Federal Reserve System,
From that secret meeting on Jekyll Island, where a powerful group allegedly orchestrated the modern financial system's foundation,
To the claims of deliberate manipulation of economic cycles like the Great Depression.
and the enduring hidden power of what he terms the London connection.
Mullins presents a narrative of a financial syndicate operating outside public scrutiny, influencing wars, and shaping global finance for its own profit and control.
Mullins' work, regardless of where you stand on its claims, undeniably offers a radical reinterpretation of modern history.
It frames major global events not as accidents or natural progressions,
But as orchestrated outcomes of specific financial interests designed for specific gains, it urges us to look beyond the surface of official narratives.
to question the true architects of our economic and political realities.
What would it mean for your understanding of history, of economic freedom, or even of national identity if such deep hidden layers of financial power were consistently at play?
How do we as informed citizens continue to ask the uncomfortable questions and seek out what might be considered unfiltered analysis in a world filled with such complex and often conflicting historical interpretations?
It's a thought that truly lingers, doesn't it, long after you put down the book.